Today, I'm talking to Heather Nelson, a mom in her early 40s who is in the midst of her second journey acting as a surrogate. Heather opens up about why she chose to be a surrogate, how she takes care of herself emotionally and physically in the process, and what it's really like to hand a baby over with love. We also talk about the screening process, expectations, compensation, pregnancy and perimenopause, and why the world needs more surrogates. This conversation will help demystify the surrogacy process and answer a lot of the questions we all have. Have a listen. Hello, my friend, and welcome to the Belong Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Jessica Long. I am a health coach specializing in perimenopause, a longtime fitness instructor, mama of two littles, and a wife. If you are a midlife woman wondering what the actual F is going on with your hormones, your emotions, your relationships, your career, and your life in general, then you belong here. Join me each week as I share my own personal stories of how I navigate this wild stage of life. I also bring in experts and fellow badass midlifers to share their incredible stories of career pivots, managing relationships, parenting, living a healthy lifestyle, and much more. So listen, if midlife has you feeling like you're just not yourself anymore and alone in the chaos, this podcast is for you. Grab your giant water bottle, snap on your weighted vest, and let's get to it. Heather, you are such an altruistic person in so many ways, and we're here to talk about one of the biggest ways. It's such an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. I love the story. I'm always happy to answer any questions. People ask me questions all the time, and they're like, "Are you okay with me asking?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm an open book, so ask anything you need."
Well, and I really appreciate that because a lot of us, this is something we know very little about. So it's a gift that you're giving us to be such an open book and to answer our questions. And I know it's vulnerable, so I really appreciate that. And I see that. And I thank you for that.
I feel like the more I can talk about my story and normalize it and educate people, the more normalized it'll be. And then surrogacy is like one of those things that we don't have enough of. There's a lot of people looking for them. So I'm hoping to inspire others to want to take the journey too.
Exactly. And by sharing your story, that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you're helping us understand so that we can help other people understand. So you're just having this positive ripple effect. And I love that so much. So I'd love to just start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Ask you what first inspired you to be a surrogate? Is this something that you kind of always knew you wanted to do, or was it more something that came to you one day?
It really came to me one day. One of my past jobs, there was another girl that worked there that was a surrogate, and I was super intrigued. I think she had 2 kids at the time, and she's like, "I'm going to be a surrogate." And I'm like, "What?" And I remember her coming in my office, and I was just so curious. I had so many questions, and I was so interested in this concept. And like, you kind of had heard of it. I know a lot of people hear about it more on like the celebrity side. And so I was very intrigued. And at the time, I had already had 2 of my kids. And I just remembered I loved being pregnant. I had really good pregnancies. I had really good births. And I was like, I think this is something that I could do. And at the time in my life, I was done having my own children. And so I was like, this will be something new to kind of, dabble into. And just like most people, you get on the internet and you Google and you're like, what is surrogacy? And surrogacy agencies. And so I did a little bit of research, and then I pitched it to my ex-husband at the time, and he was like, "No, you're not doing that." And I was like, "Why?" Like, I'll be giving to a family, it would be a financial help for our family. And it's just something I'm really passionate about. And he was like, "No." I don't think he knew enough about it. I showed him some videos, and I think we might've even gotten on a call with one of the agencies, and he was just like, "It's not for me." So I kind of put that away. And then fast forward a few years, we ended up getting a divorce, and I was in the spot where I'm like, I really wanted to do this. Like, I just felt like I had this calling. And so I did it. And then my husband at the time, we were married at that point, and I had told him about it. And he's Latino, and his family's Catholic, and he was kind of like, "Wait, what do you want to do?" And I was like, so again, gave him all the information. We watched some videos, and he quickly was on board. And, he's like, "I just want you to do something that you're passionate about, and I support you, and we're going to take this journey together, and we'll learn along the way." So that's kind of like what inspired me to do it the first time.
Wow. So it was a friend that you saw going through this experience. You mentioned that you had good pregnancies, good births. I know that's not the case for all of us listening. I'm sure that helps you make the choice.
I mean, I know we'll probably dive into kind of like the process and stuff, but those are some of the questions that they ask you when you're going through the process is they want to know like, how are your pregnancies? Did you have any medical issues? How are your births? Did you have C-sections? I mean, they really want to know your past pregnancies. They want to know what the history is. And a lot of times they don't take surrogates who've never been pregnant because they don't know. Are you going to get diabetes or, whatever it might be? So they really want people who are maybe not necessarily done having babies, but have had babies and are ready to take that plunge.
Oh my gosh. So you had two of your own when
Mm-hmm.
you were a surrogate the first time.
Yep.
Okay. So you had some experience, some history. You could answer those questions. I'm sure there's some like psychological and emotional screening they do as well. Can you tell us some of the questions that they asked that maybe surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really not an easy process. Like they tell you, surrogacy takes a minimum a year. By the time you inquire with them, you basically fill out. I joke around; it was like 90 pages long of. They want to know everything about you, what you do for work, your history, your medical history, how you feel about certain topics, like how you feel about abortions. And, they really want to know everything about you. I feel like they probably know more about me than I do about myself because they have so many questions. So once you get through that process, then there's the psychological screening and they ask you all the types of questions, like how do you feel about giving up the baby? Because I think that's probably the number one thing. And like, how would you feel if they wanted to limit you on what you eat? And they really ask you and they want to know where you're at mentally, just to make sure like there's not going to be any problems, but also like to kind of set you up for success when you go through the matching process. Is they want to match you with the people who have the same inspirations and beliefs and those kinds of things. So that was step two. And then you also do a background check. So make sure, I didn't have any criminal history. And then you go through medical. So like once you get through that, then you get to the medical state. And depending on where the fertility clinic is at the time, for that journey, it was in LA. So I had to go to LA and you meet with a fertility doctor and they do all the traditional screenings, pap smear, check your uterus, you do blood work, make sure, you're not taking drugs and all the things. And so once you get through that and they're like, okay, now you're ready to go into this, like basically in the database. And that's when they begin to match you. So all of that has to happen before.
My gosh. Okay. So many questions.
It's a lot.
So so you go through all of that and then do they match you with the intended parents before? I mean, I'm assuming that has to happen before you
No, all
actually
that
get
I think
pregnant.
actually you get matched before medical because again, depending on who you match you with, that's where the fertility clinic is. So I actually had started a journey with two men. They lived in Sweden. We had gone through this whole process, got to medical screening, got approved, then went to contract. And their fertility clinic was in LA. So I had to go fly back and forth to LA to get all that testing. Unfortunately, they only had produced one embryo. And so when we did the transfer, it didn't take. So they decided not to continue with the journey. So then it's like, then you start all over again. And so
Wait,
then
is that what just happened
no,
recently? Or that was your first
my
journey?
very first journey was
Oh,
with them. A lot of people don't know about that one just because it didn't really happen. And so once that stopped happening, I went back into basically the dating pool of surrogacy and you get rematched. And this specific, my last journey, she lived in LA and her fertility clinic was in San Diego. So once we were matched, that's where I went to medical. So you do have to get matched depending on where the embryo lives. So basically they take all of this information that you've given, this 90-page document, and they match you with an intended parent. And it goes from questions of, would you be okay with a single mom? Would you be okay with two dads, two moms? I mean, they literally ask you everything. And so you really have to decide, what do I want my journey to look like? Yeah, I was really open to anybody at that point. And they match you on, do you want to have a relationship after? Because again, you're like setting up this relationship and you really need to be very clear what the expectations are. And so once you get matched through the agency, they're like, like, hey, you're going to go like on this interview. And it's literally, I call it like the blind date. You go on this Zoom call and you've never met this person before. Like you've seen photos. They send you profiles, like photos and obviously background about who they are. And you go on this call. And my second journey, I knew right away that she was the perfect match. She didn't have a partner, so she was going to be a single mom. She had to get an egg donor, she had to get a sperm donor, and then she had to get a surrogate. But she knew deep down she always wanted to have a child. She always wanted to have a little girl. And so she went through the process for years with different fertility clinics that didn't match her with anybody. And so she came to me and it was instant. You're not technically on the call supposed to be like, oh, will you be my surrogate? But she did. And we still have to say, like, we need to think about it. And then obviously have the conversation with my husband of like, do we feel this is the right match? And she was, and we are still friends to this day.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was going to ask because you mentioned it was kind of like dating. I wanted to know how much of a say you have in who you get to work with, but it sounds like you have a voice there and
For
they
sure.
have a voice and everybody has to agree. And
Yeah.
that's so interesting, all the questions about, like you said, setting expectations so that you guys can be successful. What are your expectations about what our relationship is, probably during the pregnancy, after? And so in that particular case, did you choose to have a relationship with her after? You mentioned you're still friends. Have you seen the child?
Great
How
question.
is that relationship working?
So I gave birth to her little daughter in 2020, March of 2020. We all know what happened to the world. And so literally a week later, the whole world shut down. And she was from Florida. So she was able to fly back. And we had this beautiful experience after I had the baby. And she invited me to her hotel room. I got to see the babies. I brought my kids with me to meet the baby. So we knew like what that was going to look like. I want to be involved as much and as little, whatever her comfort level is, but we did agree to still stay in contact. She sends me videos all the time of her. She asked me for family, photos of my family. And at some point when I make it to Florida or she comes back to California, we would definitely love to like reconnect. But right now, as it stands, we have an open relationship. Some surrogates don't want a relationship after, whether, it's too hard or whatnot. And some families prefer that. They want to have a surrogate that once the baby's done, that's it. But as you know, going through pregnancy and having a baby is a beautiful thing. And so to go through an experience like that, to like never have a relationship, I just don't think I could do that. I knew that I needed to stay connected, see photos, but to completely close that off, I think that was something that was never on the radar for me.
So that makes me ask this question of how did this pregnancy feel to you different than when you were pregnant with your own children? And how did you take care of yourself emotionally during this pregnancy, knowing that this baby belonged to someone else?
Well, I just told you my year process to get to this point. So it really does feel very contractual, especially when you get to the contract stage too. I mean, that's another thing as you go through and you have hard conversations. What happens if we find out the baby has Down syndrome? Like whose decision is it to say we're going to abort the baby or not? I mean, these are all conversations you
Oh
have
my
to have as
gosh.
much as like no one wants to talk about it, but you need to know like where you stand if something like that happened. And so by that going through that process for so long, it's in your head that this like is not your child, like
Okay.
there's something about it that just makes you feel like, okay, this isn't mine. And then even when you get to the transfer stage, when you're in that room together and, people always ask me what that experience is like. And it's literally like a pap smear is what I tell people. It's like a 5-minute process. They come in and they're like, this embryo belongs to so and so and so and so. And so it just, at that moment to me, that made me feel like, hey, this embryo that's about to go inside me is not mine. And obviously I felt connected and rubbed my belly and loved feeling her kick and all the things. But I always just knew deep down inside that this wasn't my child. I'm basically this oven that's, making this baby that's going to go to a new family. So it always felt it was very clear. The other things mentally that you have access to, my last journey, I went through a surrogate agency. And so you get basically set up with the social worker. And so that person is part of your journey as well with both families. So if like something weird comes up, you have kind of somebody to go to that will communicate with them directly, or, those kinds of things. So these are some of the things that you can ask for in your contract too, is to be able to have access to a therapist. So we, with this journey that I'm about to take, we did not go through an agency, but we do have a therapist that I have access to at any point if I feel like I'm not okay.
Okay, so hold on, back up. So
Like, I got
rewind. There's so much going on. I'm like losing track of all my questions because I'm perimenopausal, which you have shared very publicly that you have been experiencing perimenopause symptoms, and you are also now in the process of your second journey of being a surrogate. And so I wanted to know, how did being in perimenopause, being in your 40s, affect your decision this time around, if at all?
So people ask me too, they're like, don't you feel like you're old? So I'm going to be 43 in September. For most agencies, the cutoff, I believe, everyone's a little bit different, but it's anywhere from like 34 to 37 is kind of like the range of when you're not able to carry anymore. Obviously that is depending upon your body and your insides and if they're still good to carry a baby. And so of course that was like a worry for me, but when I went in for my screening, they're like, you have a beautiful uterus. It is prime. It is ready still. There's nothing wrong with it. So I was like, okay, like going into that, it made me feel a little bit better. I would say the only thing medically that I'm worried about is, so I do have a 4-year-old. So he was born in 2021. So it wasn't too far away that I had my last pregnancy. The only thing that I ever really experienced was like hip pain, especially as the baby grew. And so, those were things that I was worried about, but I feel very healthy. I feel like I'm very in tune with my body. Of course, I worry about it a little bit, and being able to be like, okay, I'm 43 years old and I'm about to be pregnant again. But so I guess the age thing affects it a little bit for me, but not necessarily like the perimenopause symptoms.
Well, I was 43 when I had my daughter, if that helps at all.
See,
So
and everybody's like, that's like the new thing, is that older women are having babies. And
all the
so
time.
I'm like, I'm not that scared about it. But it'll be interesting to see how my symptoms have changed as far as like the night sweats and the mood swings and all those other things that come with it. But I'm not scared yet. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, so how does it work if you're not using an agency? So you mentioned you're not using an agency this time. How does the whole process work if you're not using an agency?
I highly recommend to anybody who's about to do their first journey to go through an agency, just to walk you through the steps. I wouldn't go out of an agency if it was my first time, because I really learned a lot about the process. They help with like booking appointments, and they really help you, guide you through the process. I feel very confident in what I've learned from the last one to be able to do it on my own. The two men who I'm doing it for this journey, they actually went out of agency with their last journey. So they already know the process doing it independently. And so when they were like, are you okay going that route? And I said, yeah, because I felt very confident in it. They felt confident in it. Obviously, it saves them some money because now you're not paying another person to navigate it. But we, like I said, we have a psychological like coach that we have access to. And so she's there for both of us. And then we have lawyers. So once you get to contract, everybody gets a lawyer. Funny enough, the gentleman who I'm about to go to this journey down, their lawyer was my lawyer on my first journey. And so I was like, I want her. And they're like,
this is a small world.
It is a very small world. And the funny thing is their fertility clinic was my past journey's fertility clinic. So all of those, because of that, I felt very confident in the process, that I knew I was taken care of. I have access to people who, can walk me through that process.
How did you even find them? Or like, where do you go raise your hand and say, I'm available, I'm interested? Like, I'm picturing a Facebook group. That doesn't sound
Are you talking
right.
about to be a surrogate?
Yeah, like so how
Oh,
did you
how
find
did
if
I
you're
find
not
them?
using an agency to match you, how did you find them?
It's an interesting story. So, um, I kind of knew in the back of my mind that I really wanted to be a surrogate again because I loved I mean, if I could do it 10 times over, I would.
Aw.
Just because like I know what it can do for a family and seeing that impact, I would love to do it more. But here we are at 43. I was going to do it for my last family, but she's still not sure if she wants to have a second child. And so she didn't want me to keep waiting. And she's like, if you want to do it, go for it. If you find another couple, go for it. So I'm in the events industry. And so one of my wedding planner friends, she married a couple who was looking for a surrogate. We got connected. Long story short, we ended up not going down the journey together. But when they had a friend who was looking to go through the journey, they connected me. They're like, if we could have chose Heather, we would have. You guys should meet. And so I met them, and I just fell in love with them. So it was actually mutually. My last journey, the mom was in Florida. And so obviously that made for us not seeing each other. We didn't meet in person until like the 20-week appointment. But these guys I've like had lunch with, they live in San Francisco. So we have a little bit closer of a connection and, get to see each other a little bit more. And I just knew when I met them that I was like, yep, this is it.
And so they live in San Francisco, but they're working with a clinic in LA or Southern California. So how often do you have to travel for appointments, or are you able to get most of your appointments done locally?
So you have to go to the fertility clinic wherever that is. So I went to San Diego when I had to get cleared for medical. So I just took a day trip out of Santa Rosa down to San Diego. And then we just did a transfer back in May that didn't take. And so you do have to fly out for the transfer to San Diego. And you're only there for like 2 days. You're basically on bed rest for 24 hours after the transfer. So once you're clear to do that, you can go home. And then you're seen locally here. So there's a local fertility clinic that will like monitor until I think about 10 weeks. And then you get turned over to your regular OBGYN. So you only really go twice
Okay. So
unless
even
you like have to have a second transfer or third transfer.
right, right. So it's really mostly for the transfer, but even for the appointments leading up to the transfer, like when you have to get the progesterone shots and things, you can do that
All
locally.
local. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Actually, today I just got my box of all of my hormones. So
Okay.
I start that I have a little sticky here, on August 11th. So I'll start doing all of the hormones again. And you have to do all the blood work and ultrasounds and all that stuff. But I will just be seen locally. And then they send all the records to the clinic in San Diego.
Okay. And so you're going through this again. I know you're so positive you've done it before, and I don't want to create any doubt, but have you ever had any doubts? Did you ever have any during your first journey, even if you were kind of in the middle of it? Like, am I doing the right thing? And how did you handle that?
My first journey, there was only one incident that was really hard for me. If most people remember back in 2019, we had massive wildfires here in Sonoma County. And so I was pregnant, and of course, the news doesn't make it look any better. They're like, all of California's on fire. And so the mother was like kind of freaking out about it, obviously, because of the smoke smells and things like that. So she asked me to leave. Like she asked me to leave the area to be able, until the smoke. But we all know 2019, like the fires just kept happening and new ones, and it was a lot. And so that was hard for me because I have a job, I have two kids, I have a husband, and I can't just like up and leave and then leave them and I go by myself. So that was really hard, but that's where our social worker really stepped in and like helped navigate those conversations to come up with a plan. And so I get where she was coming from, and obviously you have to respect because like that's not my baby, like, but I want to make sure that the baby's safe and that the mom feels confident and we can move forward. So that was really the only time that was really hard for me. And then I think for this journey, because we already went through the transfer and it didn't take, I think the hard part for me is like getting over the thoughts of like, what did I do wrong? Did
Yeah.
I not give my shot the right way? Was it something I ate? You kind of go through this doubt, but I'm very lucky that the parents were like, this is not you. Obviously, there's something wrong with the embryo. They do a lot of tests to figure out the health of all these embryos, and they actually kind of rate them. I'm actually really intrigued by this process now that I've done it. I'm actually going to have our fertility doctor come on my podcast and talk about it because it's wild. They show me their spreadsheet of their 17 embryos, and it shows you who's healthy and it tells you if they're boys or girls and stuff. So they do enough testing to know like that they're strong, but you know, things happen. So they were very understanding. They're like, this isn't nothing you did. It's going to be okay. We'll just keep trying again. And so I was very lucky, but you know, you kind of never know in situations like this, like what's going to happen
That's
and
right.
how they're
And
going to
so
react.
I can see how important it is to, like you were mentioning up front, try to imagine any possible scenario, which I'm sure fires all over the place was probably one that you didn't think of. And so it came as a surprise. And then you have to manage that in the moment in real time. And that's what you're trying to avoid with all of this planning. So, yeah, I can see how incredibly complicated and also like personal and emotional it is. Because, like you said, you have a life, you have a job, you have a family, and yet you are trying to grow a new human and protect that human. And it's not always easy to find the best way.
Yeah. And there's, I mean, as anybody knows who's had a baby, it's like there's so many doctor's appointments and even just leading up to the transfer, like how much stuff you have to do, like how many monitoring appointments, you have to make appointments, you have to book flights. And like there's a lot of pre work that happens. I feel like once you're pregnant, I'm like, okay, now we just go see the doctor once a month and we're good to go. But it's a huge time commitment for sure.
Well, yes. That's one way of putting it. So I do want to ask, and I feel like this is the tough question, but you already have mentioned a couple times that this is what everybody asks, which is how do you feel when when you give birth and you hand the baby over, and how exactly does that work? Are the intended parents there? Are they not? Do you get to decide together whether that happens? And then how does the handoff happen? Walk us through that.
So the agency does get involved when you get a little bit closer to set those expectations. Are the 10 parents allowed to be in the room? Can I have my spouse in the room? Are you going to do skin to skin? Is the skin to skin with the new parent, or is it with you? Are you going to pump? Some people even are okay with breastfeeding. I mean, these are all questions and very clear details of what we need to figure out. And I believe it's a document that I fill it out, they fill it out, and then it actually gets handed over to the doctors. So with my first journey, we agreed for her to be in the room, and so yeah, she was pretty much in the room the whole time. There was a point where we kind of kicked my husband out, and we sent him home, and Lisa just stayed there with me, and but we knew that she was going to do skin to skin. So yeah, baby came out, and baby went right to mom. So I didn't even have the baby at any point. Well, I did later, but went to mom, and just watching her get this gift that she's always wanted for so long. I mean, she's been going through this journey for years, and she was just crying and so happy, and like she just like instantly fell in love. You just knew exactly like that what you were meant to do, and why you do it, right? And so it was super magical to watch that experience. And then she asked me, do you want to hold her? And I said, of course. And so I got to hold her. We agreed I would pump, but I was not going to do like breastfeeding. That was definitely not something in the cards for me. And then baby gets cleaned up. We each had our own rooms. So baby went back with mom, and me and my husband went in there, and I think we stayed one night. I would definitely say, because I've had two babies, that was like the weird part, is just gave birth and I'm sitting in this room and I don't have a baby. You know, like, what do? We eat. My husband brought me food. We watched TV, and then I got to leave. But that night she brought the baby in and came to check on me and make sure everything was good. And then when she got released and I got released, I went and visited her. And so I got to hold the baby again. And so yeah, it was a very special moment, and it was not one point that I was like, this is going to be super hard giving this baby up. It was a very beautiful moment.
It sounds like it. I'm kind of getting emotional listening to the story and thinking about it from her perspective, and what a long journey that was for her. And like you said, what a gift that
She
you gave
loves
her.
that baby girl so much. And I think, those are some of the things when you pick who your attended parent is, you want to make sure that it's the right match and that you're giving a baby to a family who really wants it and like almost deserves it in a way. And when you find somebody that is so excited to be a parent, that for me was very inspiring.
It's also emotional to even listen to. So you had the baby. How do you take care of yourself? You're now postpartum, but you don't have the baby with you. And a lot of times what we hear about in the postpartum period is the bonding, the skin to skin breastfeeding, and how much that affects our hormones and helps us. And it's kind of what our body's anticipating. So you mentioned you pumped a little bit. Did that only last while she was still in California, or were you shipping her
Did ship for a
frozen
little
milk?
bit,
Or
and COVID happened, right? And so COVID allowed us not to ship as easy. And then I never produced a lot. So it was kind of, I didn't want to say a waste of time, but it was like a waste of time and energy and money to be able to do that. So we only did it, I want to say, for maybe like a month. And so, yeah, I came home. I'll never forget leaving the hospital and you have all your stuff, but there's like a baby you're going home with. And so that part was definitely a little odd for me, but I got home and I was like, okay, now what?
yeah.
I honestly kind of just went back to regular life. I was supposed to be off work for a month after. But after a week, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go back. But again, COVID, and I'm in the events industry. My job was kind of obsolete. So I actually ended up being out for like 6 months and I just really embraced it. I really took care of myself physically. That was probably the best shape of my life.
You're one of the few people I've heard say, yeah, during COVID, I was in the best shape of my life.
I mean, I did eat and drink, let's be honest.
Well,
But I also
okay.
like took that time to like really like work on myself. And I did a lot of, reading and just slowing down. So it'll be interesting this time because hopefully we don't come out of a pandemic after this pregnancy, but what it will be like to go back to normal life.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, what about this journey will be different than the first? I'm sure, like every pregnancy is a little different, a little unique.
Well, and everyone knows you're pregnant and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
you're not. And then they're like, how are you? And they can't be like, how's the baby? I mean, some do, and I'm like, good, but it's always that like weird.
Have you ever had any like really awkward encounters with people who've asked you questions or have been sort of insensitive or just ignorant about it and not even through fault of their own?
Yes, for sure. I think that was one of my biggest fears going into it is like, what are people going to think? What are people going to think of me? What questions are they going to ask? Are they going to make me feel bad about my decision? And I had to say like 98% of the people did not. Everybody was super supportive. They were, they wanted to know all the things. And so I actually didn't document that journey as much, but this one I am because I really want people, like I said, I really want to normalize it and educate people. And so I really want to use my platform to be able to do that this journey. But I would say the older generation of white men are the ones that would probably have asked the weirdest questions. A lot of people ask my husband, how could you let someone else get your wife pregnant? And I'm like, it's not like that. I didn't go like have sex with someone to get pregnant. I mean, this is like, a huge process. It's a medical, scientific process. It wasn't like that. And so I think a lot of people, again, not knowing what the process is, even navigating kids. My son at the time was in kindergarten, so he was 5. And then my daughter was 7. So, just interacting with their peers and volunteered in my son's kindergarten class and to tell the teacher. I had to tell all my kids' teachers so they weren't blindsided. And if my kids had questions, Aiden was 5 at the time, so he didn't know as much. And funny enough, the girl that I was telling you about who inspired me to be a surrogate, her sister was also a surrogate, and her sister's biological daughter was in my son's kindergarten class.
Aw.
So the teacher already kind of knew this world and how to navigate it. So that was a blessing. But navigating with my kids, helping them understand and their friends and their peers. And so this journey will be a lot different because my son is now 11 and my daughter's about to go to, high school. And so I think there's going to be more questions about the process, especially with the teenagers of like wanting to know the things. So I'm an open book though. I'm not going to lie about it. I'm going to be truthful. And again, I want to educate people the right way. And so I'm here for any questions.
So let me ask one that I think a lot of listeners are probably wondering, but it does feel like a crass question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Do it.
How much do you get paid to do this?
It's a good question. It's so funny because now when you're going through the journey, you'll see ads like become a surrogate for 75,000 or be a surrogate for 100,000. I would say all in all, I'm probably around 70. You get paid monthly, like a monthly stipend. And then they cover all your medical stuff. They give you money each month for vitamins. You get money for clothing. The transfer, you get money. So there's definitely like little parts along the way where you get compensated. I remember when I was negotiating this contract, obviously, like I just wanted to make sure like I had the same compensation as I did the last time. I'm seeing now more people are actually going higher. So I think it's starting to change a little bit. But some of the things that were important to me is like, okay, I knew I had hip like issues. So I wanted to go to a chiropractor. So, they included that. They also included massages. So those are, some of the things as you're going through the contract is making sure that you're covered to like, basically make sure you're comfortable. And you don't have to claim taxes on that income because it's considered pain and suffering. So it is a nice chunk of money. And a lot of people use it to pay off bills or down payment for a house. And, and so that's a big controversial thing. A lot of people are like, if this is something you've been wanting to do for somebody else, why would you get compensated for it? And it's like, well, this wear and tear on your body. There's the mental aspect of it. There's, you never know, like something really bad could happen. And I have kids and something could happen to me. And so you need to make sure that you're covered in any of those situations. And so kudos for people who would do it for free. I believe, there are people out there that are willing to do it, but like just to have a little bit of compensation of like what it does to your family and your body. And like, I feel like it's worth it.
100%. I would not argue that at all. Okay. Are there any questions that you think I should have asked that I didn't ask about surrogacy or that you get asked often and want to answer for people here?
I don't think so. I feel like we covered most of it. Again, my purpose this time around is really to educate people because we need more surrogates. A friend of mine is about to take the journey herself she actually just got matched, which I'm really super excited about. And she's here in Windsor. So I'm like, yay, we're going to be pregnant together. Surrogate. But she was saying that they need like 250 surrogates. And that's just with one agency. And so these poor families are just waiting and waiting to, to have a baby. And I feel like if you're going to invest that much in the process to have one, like you are very much invested in being a parent. And so I just encourage people, if they're in their heart, they're like a little curious about it, to lean into the curiosity and to do the research, to jump on a call with an agency. They'll totally answer all questions for you. I've had many people reach out to me about being a surrogate or even opposite, like they're about to get a surrogate and like what that process is. And so I'm here to answer questions because I just want more people to do it. I wish I could do it again.
Thank you. So if anyone does have extra questions, how can they find you and reach you?
On Instagram, my personal account is heathernelson.life. That's where I'm most active. You can follow me on my podcast because, like I said, I'm going to be doing more about surrogacy. I have a really cool lineup of guests that I'm really excited to have on. I also just joined TikTok. I'm probably going to have a YouTube channel here soon. I also have a website called theconnectionhive.co. That is my coaching business, my strategy coaching business. But you can find a lot of my podcasts and stuff on there as well.
Okay. Tell them the name of your podcast.
I always forget to do that. My podcast is called Life Conversations with a Twist. And I've actually had Jessica on before.
Yes.
And I basically have women on who have unique stories, have really cool journeys. They have something that they need to share to inspire and empower other women. And I'm going on over 4 years of doing it weekly and I love it. I know.
That is so awesome. Congrats to you. And I know that you have said you want to be the number one podcaster in Sonoma County. So everyone listening, go support her goals. Go listen to her show. I've listened to so many episodes. You've had some really cool guests on. I love it. Thank you so, so much. I so appreciate your time and just shedding light on this topic that kind of feels like a black box to a lot of us and just helping us hear a personal story about what it's really like. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate having you on.
Yes, thanks for having me. And if you want me back post baby to really talk about the experience of going through pregnancy, menopause, just let me know. I'm happy to.
Yes, we'll have you back, hopefully in not too long. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode got you thinking and fueled the fire that I know already lives within you. I would love so much if you would follow or subscribe to this podcast and leave a review on Apple or comment on Spotify. I'd love to hear what you think, and this will help more midlife women like you find this podcast and feel informed, connected, and badass. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with one friend who you think would enjoy it. And if you want to hang out with me between episodes, follow me on Instagram @belongwellness. See you next week.